you please tell us what's your name and where you're from?
All right, so my full name is Tou Ger Bennett Xiong.
So how do you think today went?
Fabulous. I was a little skeptical, being the weather and folks coming from all over. But wow, I was amazed. I didn't get a number, but I mean, I think we had well over around 200, or more. I mean, that bus alone was like, I think, 100 people. So yeah, so I was inspired, and these kids came from all over.
So what did you think about the sheriff's speech?
You know, first of all, I got to give him credit that he came out. He didn't have to. And by the way, something about the sheriff, I know that he's retiring in 2 weeks. So he didn't have to come out, but he did. So I got to give him that. His speech, I think he was trying to speak from the heart as a sheriff. And I know that, I can tell you that I met the sheriff earlier a few days ago, and he did take his sheriff hat off and say that, that he felt sorry. I really like the fact that you saw his human side, that even though he was a sheriff and he's bound by certain protocol of his office or his role, but he did apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry, it's okay. And my human side says, I'm sorry for what happened to your father. And so I appreciated that.
Great. So what are your plans now on how to end racism in the Hmong community and cultures everywhere?
You know what? The struggle continues, brother. Again, like I said in my speech, this movement started many years ago, particularly in the Asian American community in 1982 with the Vincent Chin murder, and then 1992 with the Japanese foreign exchange student, and then 10 years ago, Chai Shua Vang, 8 years ago, Cha Vang in Peshtigo, Wisconsin. 3 years ago, there was a Hmong hunter in North Carolina, he was in his early 20s, just got married, went hunting, and the people who killed him accidentally, they say, shot him not once but twice. They killed him, and he never came home. And then in this situation a month ago with Sao Lu Vang. So I think there's a lot of work to do still. There's a lot of ignorance out there in the woods. Like I said, this is a hunting sport. It's not even a contact sport. You're not supposed to go in fear for your life. It's a recreation. And so why is it that in certain states, in certain parts of the country or the certain parts of states, that people tend to go out there and have the mentality kill or be killed, right? So I have a message to the Wisconsin and Minnesota DNR with all this racially motivated altercations that lead to fear, distrust, and sometimes death in the woods. You know what? You're all grown people. You have guns. You don't know the state of mind or the mental state or the physical state or the level of intoxication, whether the other hunter's been drinking in the woods. So you meet a stranger, regardless of their background, be nice. If they get on your land accidentally, it's very common, especially if you don't have fences, be nice. Hey, are you lost? Sorry, buddy. My bad. Okay, that's our land. Bye. If you shot a deer and a deer ran to other people's private property and you go in there, hey, excuse me, I shot that deer. Can I go get it? Be nice. All right. Then a situation happened recently where this father and his son went hunting, and the deer went into another neighbor's land, and they were deciding who's gonna shoot, who shot it or which shot killed the deer. You know what? They solved it with the coin flip. Wow. No one died in the process. Yeah, the person who didn't get the deer was a little bummed, but let's learn from these past mistakes, folks. So I think there's in terms of education, people are saying, well, if the Hmong people just kind of learn to not trespass and learn to obey the law, that these problems will be solved. No, I want to share with you, when we met with the Sheriff Andrews himself said, this started out as a trespassing call. The call was about trespassing. But the results now, as you can see in the criminal complaint, this case, and I quote the sheriff, this case has nothing to do with trespassing. Okay? And he gave the example, if you trespass onto my land, I have no right to treat you and to beat you up and to give you the kind of injuries that Mr. Vang had. So let's just make it clear that it's not about trespassing. It's about fellow human beings. I have a gun, you have a gun or a weapon. How do we talk to each other?
Hmong TV 有这边么晒热晒热天，我得给他口中的家， ta xin ni bỏ nó lúc lan nó giờ lúc lan một chợ một bia theo một vải lúc lan de nó hùa thì nitrogen liquid store nhớ đơn đờ nốt thành bỏ nữa nhớ đờ cho cái bây giờ trâu cầu cái bây giờ trâu đờ cho cái sự chùa kiến đờ lúc mình mà kiến đờ nó chỉ giờ cho cái cổ ý ở một east to west cho cái mình này giờ một north to south nhớ đờ lúc con ở cổ ý thiên mình này sự chùa nữa là cho cái cổ ý thiên mình này sự chùa cho cái bây giờ trâu hai về số nữa nên là từ giờ xã tàu thì chợ tiền bia để nó chuyển chọn trong tua chua trâu nay đôi cái liquid store nhớ trâu thì nó thành phò nó tôi sẽ tông giờ trâu chỉ y xa sùn bao chua xa chỉ ý rằng gì tôi sẽ tông giờ trâu chỉ y xa sùn bao chua xa chỉ người cũng muốn lú vẹn cái giờ thâu tua rồi ni tao ni khó chờ là tao ni vậy ni chế là nhân đó khó chờ phiền nó hóng là thâu rồi tao cho chờ và phò đi loại ni xã tàu 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 ni chỉ muốn cho chế lo thâu là ni chỉ muốn sử dụng dọn trong hồ trâu lan chợ và nitrogen liquid store nó là deliver cho ni vậy ni vừa cho cổng gây đó sầu chỉ là thâu tua nữa nè chỉ ta lên đó giờ thâu là thâu tua ni vừa tàu chăn đó ni sĩ chỉ ta nữa là cho nhiều xe là giờ cả cho và bóc là giờ cho game biểu ni sĩ tàu tên đó rồiยังการcho cáที่จัง refund นี่เขาเนี่ยวันนี้chỉ sĩ cho nó cho cáตัวนี้ที่sĩ nói giờ ý tôi mong cái sử dụng mong thích cả mong credit tôi mong rồi nó chọn trong sau một đồ lử chọn nên là sau một đồ lử tu và này chỉ hu ni tu hu ni để nó mà thế giờ tu what come ni thế tu hu ni liแต่ฉันเอาไปก็เข้านะมาเทียตัวต่อใจนี่นะเจ้า information ย้อนเด TV screen ก็เจอก็หูโตก็จะต่อ 9% discount.
Are there any other recommendations in order how to prevent this in the future or anything like that, or any thoughts or ideas?
I think these towns, I think there just needs to be a mass sort of public education awareness campaign. For example, you know, when you drive around a snowplow in the winter in the freeway, it's going really fast. It's a big machinery. It's very dangerous. There's a sign that very clearly says, stay back and stay alive, right? Because of the number of people who've died on the roads by driving too close. I think there should be a sign for DNR in the woods or when in their ticket, when they go buy a ticket or register, there should be a sign that says, be nice in the woods to strangers with the gun and stay alive. Okay, so that's my message. Very loud and clear. Wisconsin DNR, Minnesota DNR, I won't even charge you for this, all right? Just put, be nice, right on the ticket, right when you go buy your license, your tag, you get some kind of a regulation ticket brochure. Put on there the theme, be nice to strangers in the woods who have a weapon and stay alive. Plain and simple.
Have you experienced a lot of personal racism with yourself?
You know, being first generation, growing up Hmong American here in the Midwest, in Minnesota, of course, I grew up like many typical new refugee, first generation immigrant or refugee kid. You know, when you go to a predominantly to a school where most people don't look like you. Yeah, growing up, myself and a lot of my peers included, you know, the word chink and gook and Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, and go back to your country, your flat-nosed China boy, all that stuff we've heard, I've heard it before. And a lot of my friends did experience that too. And a lot of them resorted to anger, and they channeled that anger towards joining gangs and, you know, taking it back out on, you know, their parents because they were caught between two worlds. And you and I both, and now what's sad to me is that, you know, for a lot of refugee families, you and I maybe kind of grew out of it, and we kind of learned maybe more positive ways to deal with racism and discrimination. It's unfortunate, Kyle, that here we are, 2014, these are grown men going into the woods. They are grown men going to the woods, and they have a deadly weapon, and they're meeting other people, and they haven't mastered that skill of how to handle a bully, of how to not bully, right? And so it is unfortunate. So it comes down to, it's an issue of, you know, public safety. It's an issue of violence prevention in our communities. There's funding for these programs. It's an issue of, sort of diversity training. How aware of you of the different communities that come into come into your community for like hunting and fishing? And the DNR, how well trained is your DNR staff in terms of working across cultural communities where English isn't their first language, right? So, and also your brochures and your training, we say, oh yeah, let's educate the public, but let's also educate our staff. And the DNR, how diverse is your staff? How many African American or Asian Americans or Hmong Americans do you have on your staff that work in certain areas, right? I mean, there's a case in Minnesota now where there's a DNR, allegedly a law enforcement agent of the DNR department, allegedly harassing and taunting and even letting a dog loose onto Hmong hunters to intimidate and fear them.
Yes, hello, I'm Edward Russell. I'm an attorney. I do bankruptcies exclusively and have done that for about 10 years. My office is in St. Paul. It's at 970 Raymond Avenue, near the corner of University, near 94 and 280. I would be happy to talk with Hmong people. I've had a lot of Vietnamese people throughout the years, and I've had Hmong clients also. Bankruptcy can provide a new life for you. If you're being overwhelmed by debt, it is definitely something you should look into. And I would be happy to provide any answers to any questions you might ask, and I do not charge for the first meeting. So I would be happy to see you if you would call. Thank you.
What kind of solutions can you offer? Do you think that there needs to be more Hmong people in the hunting community or any community in general to spread awareness or anything like that? Or
I'm glad you asked that. So this is a widespread multi-pronged, multi-solution approach. In our own Hmong American communities, among Hmong hunters, there's thousands, right? There are thousands of registered Hmong hunters in St. Paul, in Minnesota, Wisconsin. There's Hmong hunter associations. I can name of like 4 or 5 Facebook groups myself of like outdoors, hunting, whitetail hunting, and like pheasant and crossbow hunting. So my challenge is, I want to present to these groups is, are you getting together and having a conversation among your groups on how to act, how to support each other and educate each other, and consolidate your resources so that when an event like this happens, you speak out as a group because you have what they call purchasing power, right? If you have a boycott, let's just say this year, we talked about this today, let's just say all the Hmong hunters in Minnesota and Wisconsin for 1 year alone didn't buy any licenses, any hunting equipment, any bullets, anything at all that has to do with outdoor hunting. Think about the money that's lost in terms of revenue for all these sports stores, right? These and also the licensing fees and all that. Think about that. What a huge impact that you have, because we are a country that's run by money and sponsorship and advertising and revenue, right? So that's one avenue. How can we empower our Hmong hunting groups to consolidate their power and their purchasing power and to have a stronger voice? And again, getting back to the other component, educating the DNR, and also just diversity educating in general, like in little towns like Durand or Pepin County or Prestiga, Wisconsin, and these tiny little towns in the middle of nowhere. When you open up a history book, American history book, is there anything in there that talks about Hmong American history? There are 70,000, 80,000 Hmong in the Midwest here. We are an integral part of the community. We are citizens, taxpayers, we are business owners, we work in the public schools, we work in the healthcare, we work in law enforcement, we hold city council offices, we work in public-private sectors. So why are we not in the history books? People still think, oh, are you guys from Mongolia? Hmong, where's that? There's Japan, Japanese from Japan, Chinese from China. Where is Hmongland? Where are you guys from? So it is ignorance too. It's fear of the unknown. So that when people don't know, and it's human nature, Kyle, when fear of the unknown, and we grew up, we knew that. Other kids were like, are you Chinese? They were asking you and me if we were Chinese when Korean or Hmong, Vietnamese, Filipino wasn't on the map, you know? So these are some very serious questions that we need to ask of our policymakers, our local public officials, you know, people at the state level, members of law enforcement. So yeah, I think this is a bigger problem, and you know, and some people call it racism in America. And to answer your question, racism in America is very much alive, and it exists in every corner. And so, you know, I should hope that it is my hope that this doesn't happen again, but I also fear that it will.
It's interesting that you actually brought that up because I know in high school we actually skipped over a lot of the Asian countries. We didn't really learn much about the history. That brings up another issue. I'm not sure if you're too comfortable answering, if you don't have to, if not. So this sort of brings up, I guess, what question that brings to mind is like, it's sort of scary that someone has such an emotional outburst just by using their fists. What makes them think that they can't use an actual gun to like kill someone? Right. And I was wondering, do you think this relates to any gun laws, or and what's your feelings on that, or do you think that doesn't have to change, or it's just racism in general?
Well, I think racism, ignorance, bigotry, lack of information about other cultures and ethnicities, couple that with the dangerous weapon. Yeah. And couple that with the whole culture of machismo, ego, you know, like, oh, how big is your buck? I mean, the whole hunting culture in general, right? About the best stories to tell. Like, I mean, the ego and the machismo culture that goes into it, where these people are killing deers and stuffing them and hanging them up, and they're taking pictures and count. There's actually a counting system for like the how big the buck is, the point this and point that. I don't even know that, but that all comes into play about there's a lot of ego involved. So you add all that up together, right? The sort of gun, the gun control debates. You add gun with intoxicants, right? And then you add that with this whole culture and ignorance, and people in towns where they're like, oh man, we don't care to know our neighbors. We're just gonna go out there and get the biggest buck, and nobody better. And this whole idea of us versus them. Oh, we're American born, they are the illegals, right? Or oh, we're the landowners, they are the trespassers. You know, you add that all together, that is a time bomb waiting to explode. So, yes, gun control is a big part of it, but I think there's the debate needs to involve a bunch of other issues as well too.
The no của Dr. Adam Societal của tàu sản tàu tra email tàu chan tàu text message tua tàu của hay cho tiệt đại đông rộng nó của trả ba tổ lời rộng luôn do vì đi trả tiệt cho nên tôi sau tàu tua mà phèn trong giờ hay cho tiệt giờ sửaได้chịuว่าที่มันได้chịuว่าได้ต้มเราเนาะที่อยู่รองอุลัวเลยจะกูมาว่าที่รองเปียได้ต้มเราเนาะตัวนี้ก็ในต่อเตาได้ต้มเรา power stream เนาะย่ออีได้basic culture มีเนียมเราว่าแต่ culture มีเนียมเนาะมาย่อหลอนเดินจะมีเนียมจะมีเนียมอย่ารู้ว่าเจนี่ปอนเดินเนาะหนึ่งปอชาหมดต่อเที่ยหนึ่งจะมั่วจัวสอย่อตัวหกไปตีเลยกูจีปอเกยงกูเทจ่อได้ยาดอกข้อมูลเนาะหล่อว่าตัวก็กูปอกเกตตัวจงจะมีเนียมยออีกเขาว่าตัวจะหิงกาตัวตัวยาลีไปที่สีตอนจะมีเนียมเนาะหล่อโมประกอบเที่ยวอวนดอตัวดันต้มเหลาเนาะอวดตัวก็จะฮีนอนกาตัวโมรู้เจสุริจะฮีโซลุ่นน้องเที่ยวจะฮีเดี๋ยวถ้าจะก็ยอกาตัวโมตัวรู้เจจะจัวสอนเนาะในวันกาโมตัวรู้เจมันย่อต่อหอมันเนี่ยmột vị phê thiết kho thiết một nhóm bốn tông hồ ta trả hồ một ý dạo chẳng chân chập lời giờ cho chùa xó của nhon đẩy hồ dù lúc chế hồ cho no mà do một kho dù cho thị su thiết kho dù chọn gai cho lành đỡ có chọn trả tua tàu thầu chân trả tua tàu rong cho hồ chè cho chua nó mù ba tàu cho xèo ba tàu chân trả nó có chân trả trọ mua rò thì chân trả tất cả giờ tua rong mà cũng giờ trọ ít ở đây nhiều đua nó trọ đợt nó trọ ni bỏ xử lý cái này before thế after before nó mà giờ thầu chỉ tàu lon đông lộ chỉ xìa chuan chuan đó thầu lò chỉ chân trả tua rồi chỉ liệp long liệp khó after này chỉ tiền thầu lò ta mình trả tua rong bỏ đi bỏ được sai chân ba nó tan thọ cho vessel thiết chọn gai chọn chi cho lên nóเลยชีป้าโอหรือยาตัวจะจัวสอนอตัวจัวสอนย่อจีจนชายในตัวจงดอกเชิญเดอจีจะชั่วยหลบป้ารีเพย์เทียขอหัวมองเดอก็ตะการรงเรียกู้ชอบมอกันจีให้ก็ยามอยาหัวมอเจงก็ได้เตอรอยามอเดอก็นอจนมอนี่ยสามารถป้าโตก็ขอมอหนตัวเทียจงจงคือแดนต้นบล็อกนอตัวก็มอเราอย่า protect แดนต้นบล็อกนอโซลูชัน
Are you familiar with Duran, where you guys end up hosting the rally?
Actually, Duran, I do diversity education. I travel around the country, so that is one of the towns in Wisconsin that I have been to and presented at the high school and the middle school there many years ago. Yes, so I'm familiar with Duran. Now, the incident where this happened with Mr. Sao Lu Vang happened in Pepin County, near Pepin Town, south of Duran. They just happened in the same county. So I've never been to Pepin County. I've never been to the Pepin's town. But yeah, I am familiar with Duran. I also know that 20 minutes north of Duran is Menominee, where we are here, and there's a sizable Hmong community here. And right outside Menominee is Eau Claire, La Crosse, Green Bay, Appleton, and the Hmong American community in Wisconsin are dispersed throughout. Whereas in Minnesota, I know we take for granted, but we're mostly concentrated in the Twin Cities, so you can't just drive down the street and not see a Hmong family. So I think we're more visible there, the visibility of diversity in Asian Americans, whereas in communities like this, they're more invisible. I'm not surprised that in towns like that, you'll see stickers or like billboard signs, that are very pro-American patriotism, and, signs that say, speak English only, right? Or, oh, U.S. is full, red, white, and blue. And what's interesting about racism is that it's taken a different form now. Unlike the generations before us, it was very clear, with signs at diners saying whites only, blacks over here, blacks at the end of the bus, or drinking fountains for colored people, right? Now, because of civil rights laws, that's all been removed. Racism has taken a different form. It's taken the form of, oh, we're not racist. We have one black teacher in our entire district, It's kind of taken this form of, oh, we're not racist. We live next door to an Asian family. And so the idea that racism is gone, and that even the stuff that they're writing about, if you look at the statistics of racism, and it's hidden in different forms in terms of the percentage of our population, American-born, who still believe that our president was born in Kenya, is an undercover communist who's coming to take over this country, right? So when I think about these things, it's sad that we still have a huge sector of our country who still believe and who are still clinging on to these ideas. And so is that going to change? I think, I should hope so, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of changing hearts and minds, and on a mass level. But that's why today we rally, because rallies like this need to happen. And to those the skeptics are, oh, you're never going to change anything, I say, you know what? We didn't get to where we are today without the civil rights movement that came before us, without the movements, the women's rights movements that came before us, right? And women, they couldn't vote at one time. If we didn't rally today, and the people who came before us didn't rally, you and I wouldn't be sitting here right now. We'd probably be bussing tables somewhere, right? Sitting at the back of the bus. So I'm the beneficiary. You and I are the beneficiary of the struggles for human rights and civil rights long before we were born. And so now, how do we keep that struggle continue? How do we continue that struggle and become part of that struggle? It's bigger than you and me and any one group or person or generation. Today's rally was very strategically planned by these students, and I believe their mission was to send a very direct message to the district attorney of Pepin County, particularly around this case. And then I think secondly, and also just as importantly, was to send a message out to the public to say, hey, we're here to stay, we're educated, we're college students, we're Hmong, we're Americans, we're proud, and we're watching this case closely, and we demand justice. So that's sort of the overall arching goal of today. In terms of taking this rally to other communities, I don't think that would be the appropriate step. If anything, we empower people through education, and that's when we need to advocate for, again, a multicultural education, diversity education in rural areas, bringing in hiring practices. What sort of programs are you doing to bring in teachers of color, staff of color? What are you doing to attract diversity? And when I talk about diversity, I'm not just even talking about just skin color, or race or ethnicity, but I'm talking about now we have diversity in very different forms that are not really visible in terms of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community, right? And then also diversity in terms of religion and spiritual beliefs. We have what the Hmong went through as refugees from Laos 30, 40 years ago. As first generation refugees. Now there's refugees from Ethiopia, from East Africa, from the Middle East, from Spanish speaking countries, which immigration is a big issue right now. Most recently we have refugees from Burma, in Tibet, and they're going through what the Hmong American went through 30 years ago. And so how do we educate ourselves and communities here about these new, I don't even like to use the word immigrants or refugees in certain communities because of the negative attitudes towards them. I like to call them new Americans. They're not going anywhere, folks. They're here to stay. And I used to say that. I'm like, hey, I don't call my show, usually when I go present, I call it America's Best Kept Secret. Why? You know what? If everybody in a room look alike, talking like, and walking like, it'd be kind of boring. You and I, Kyle, we make our towns and towns like Durant a little more interesting. We bring a little spice.
Lúc chờ chỉnh gai nhu là do thị bông thiết sẽ loại các cường gầu nhỏ đầu tiên sẽ ý xảy sinh phò nó lúc lan được nó hụt địa plastic house họ chờ nhỏ do cầu trâu xa cho trâu vay bìa avenue north nhỏ đầu hồ ý xảy sinh phò nó nhỏ được cho kế vay bìa thiết là Peter sĩ chuẩn đợi lúc minimum đợi giờ ni sẽ order là do sẽ reserve chờ đông khu trâu tụ sở tông do trâu chí y xa trâu chí plau y chua trâu chí y xa trâu chí plau y chua cho cái phát hiện gì do tổ tá su do một trong cái ăn được đi trâu đó là tên đạo sứ ở những từ sản nó là do cho cái chế năng tụ cái lũ chùa tụ chỉ nhỏ nó một nó bây giờ này nhỏ ít nhiều vợ đùa sư từ giờ sinh dài ấy bố trâu nó thổ cho xe chạy nhỏ mù không nó nữa mù nó cái nhu chi để lúc backstage house nó đồ tí sai sinh phò nó.
Again, just like the message today, spread the love, spread the love and end the hate. And racism, it affects all of us. The sister said it best, the daughter of Sao Lu Vang. She said, when an act like this is occurred against an act of violence is committed against one person, it affects all of us. The people out there today were not just all Hmong. They were Hmong Americans, they were Caucasian. There were some members there. There's a Middle Eastern, or I believe a Indian gentleman there. And I invite communities of all colors and all ethnicities. There were a lot of native white Caucasians in the town of Durand and Pepin who came out and said, we live in this town. This is our neighborhood. We're here to support you because we think violence affects everyone. So spread the love, man, and keep preaching. A lot of the Hmong veterans who come here, they pretty much lost their status. I mean, they were, colonels and captains and served a very important role in the community and in the war in Laos. They come here and they work, as a janitor, like 12 hours or something. And so there's also a lot of our parents, our elderly generation in our community go through depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder from the war. And so one way to do that, to deal with that, is to find some kind of recreation. And fishing, hunting, these are outdoor things that they're used to, they're comfortable with, that we did in the native homeland. And so I can understand why there's a lot of Hmong elderly who are very fluent in English but still want to go out and hunt. And so if I have a message to hunters, yeah, I would say, continue to hunt. Don't give up hunting because of this. Because when we give up hunting as a community, then acts of violence wins, right? So then we kind of give into our fear. Continue to hunt. Continue to build relationships with the DNR. Continue to build relationships with landowners and educate ourselves about your rights and your responsibilities as an avid hunter and as an outdoorsman. So that just not just for Hmong. That goes across the board, And so that would be my message. And safety comes first. And again, be nice in the woods. Stay alive.
That actually brings up another interesting issue. I mean, there's a lot of gun laws and racism, and then now they bring up depression and anxiety. It's more of it's also a mental health issue. Are you an advocate of mental health awareness as well, or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I'm a strong advocate of mental health awareness, particularly in refugee communities, because I think a lot of people don't understand that refugee community, when we come to this country, we didn't just cross over an ocean, right? We, especially of a lot of elders, crossed over an ocean, but they also crossed over 100 years in terms of technology, right? Culture, language. Unlike other Asian American groups who came here from developed countries who already had PhDs and master's degrees and engineering degrees, who came here and went to Harvard and the Yale students and became engineers and scientists, we came from an agrarian society, right? And so here we are having to pretty much start from scratch all over again. And so that plays a huge role in terms of the skills set that they as refugees need to survive in this country. So that also will develop into issues of, again, mental illness and depression issues. And so yes, I strongly advocate for mental illness awareness, particularly among refugee communities.
We thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. All right.
lúc chua cọp bỏ nên nó giờ lúc chua trà rong và chua chín tàu lúc chua nó giờ lúc chua chua và cọp bỏ chu tại xin nó lúc nó giờ lúc chua trà rong lúc lúc chú và già lò liên liên đầu giờ cho các khu cá xe nó rất là mỏng và bây lúc đó nó giờ cho xèo giờ cho trà nhau lúc chế cho trà một cho cá mò nhau nó cho lúc lúc nó giờ cho cá mò là cái sâu còn lúc cái trà nó tơi thì khỏi đi bỏ nó cho sâu tơi nó chỉ cho cái trà tua ta chỉอยู่ตัวmà lúc chua trả rong lúc chua thế này giờ lúc chua nữa nè lúc chua nó giờ chủ là chọ tỏ cả tụi cá này chọ trâu lúc cái trả tơ đi nọ màอยู่thế này nhon đấy thì giờ trả thế tỏ rồi rongนี่tư bỏ nè lúc nào mà chua nhá hôm mà rong đừng có bao số mong giờ chủ tỏ cho cá cô cá sen nữa đừng có bao số mong thế này giờ rong lúc tuổi xa là bên thế giờ lúc này bỏ nó khó chờ nó giờ lúc manufacture lúc produce in nông từ nào mà là produce lan lúc chua cho nên địa tây nọ lúc chua nó chuẩn dính tới trong cơn gạo đi xa chờ cho nên cho gì tủa mong giờ có tổ bỏ họ nó chỉ là order đời lúc website có www.pacu.com giờ có chúng mà internet hỗ trợ từ phòng để coi giờ tàu chi tàu nền gạo cho plau giờ gì tàu chi tàu nền gạo cho plau